Hey guys, I'm Amanda and you're watching The Reading and Writing Life. It's time for another book tag. As you can tell from the title, this is called The Last 10 Books Tag. I saw Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative do this one and it just looked like a lot of fun, and so I'm doing it now. Let's get right to it. Question number 1, what was the last book you did not finish? There happens to be one that I didn't finish recently, and that's called Checkmate. I'll scoot over a little bit. That's called Checkmate by R.L. Mathewson. This one, it was a romance, but it was a bully romance. He was not just not nice or a little bit mean to her. He was disgusting to her. They supposedly didn't like each other all the way through school, from preschool on up to adulthood. They got in fights all the time. They get kicked out of places. There's certain bars they can't even go in as adults because they got kicked out of them. Recently got kicked out of them too. Anyway, he spit in her food for an entire year and took pictures of himself doing it and then gave her a gift. And inside the gift was all the pictures of himself spitting in food that she had eaten for a year. That is disgusting, and I was done right there. There was not any amount of niceness that was gonna make up for that, even when they started getting together, I got that far in the book, and they were still being mean to each other. And I was like, no, I'm out of here. He continued to say to her that the only thing she needed to be doing was getting him coffee and letting him do all the work. And I was like, I did not like this at all. So I did not finish it. Question number 2, the last book you reread. I don't exactly know for sure, but it's probably a J.R. Ward book, because I don't reread books at all, except if it's been a long time in between them putting out a book, the writer. Then sometimes I go back and I listen to the last book that they wrote one more time before the new book comes out. I reread that last book, and I definitely have done that multiple times with J.R. Ward's books before the next one comes out. So I would probably say one of her Black Dagger Brotherhood books. There are a lot in the series, and so probably one of those. Question number 3, the last book you bought. So I don't buy a lot of books, number 1. I never buy physical books, except I have one. The last one I bought actually came in the mail today. And yes, I've already taken the sleeve off of it because I cannot stand the sleeves, even though this one looks very cool, but I don't have it here. I'll put a picture of it up here, but it's John Green, the Anthropocene Reviewed. It's all shiny and you can't really see it. So anyway, I'll put it up there, but I have it in my hands. I bought it. I haven't even read it yet, but it's a compilation of essays. So my plan is to just read one every day till I finish it. Number 4, the last book you said you read but didn't. I think this has to be all the way back in college, because I just don't say that I read books if I haven't read them. I just say no. I don't want to read that book. If somebody says, oh, you should really read this book, I'd be like, oh, okay. But then if they ask me about it, did you read this book? I'd say, no, not yet. Or no, I don't plan to. I don't read that genre, or I don't like that book. I don't know, but I would just be honest about it. I wouldn't be like, yeah, I read it. I mean, aren't they going to then say to you, oh, did you like the part where such and such happened? And you have to just be like, yeah. I mean, I don't know. So no, I wouldn't say that I read a book that I didn't read. I mean, I did in college, but I wouldn't say that as an adult. Number 5, the last book you wrote in the margins of. I don't think I've ever done that. Sometimes when I read nonfiction books, I take notes about it. There have been books before, fiction books that I've been reading that I really liked, the phrasing that somebody did. And especially on my Kindle, I will highlight a lot of stuff. But in a physical book, I don't think I've written in any of them. Number 6, the last book you had signed. Well, in case you don't know, John Green signed every single book that came out in the first printing. So if you got the first printing, you got a signature. Now what I love about it is right here, this little thing right here is him doing a review of autographs. So it's just funny. If you know John Green, if you like John Green, that's funny. Anyway, so this is the last book that I got autographed, and I didn't get it in person. If we're talking about in person, I think the last book that I got autographed had to have been one of the Origami Yoda books with my children when we went to see him, Tom Engelberger, I think is his name, and we saw him in person in Virginia, which would have been, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, I think that's the last time I got a book signed in person, but I got this one signed. Number 7, the last book you lost. I'm not sure if I've lost any books. I don't have a lot of books, so I think I would know if one of them was missing. It probably was a school book for the kids that maybe one of them took off to read somewhere and we didn't get it back. But as far as me losing a book, I was probably a kid, or I don't even know. I didn't read books as a kid, so I was probably in college maybe, and I lost some books. We move a lot, and so we pack up our books a lot, but I still don't think that we lose them. I don't know. No, I don't think I've lost one. Number 8, what is the last book you had to replace? So I guess since I don't lose books, I don't need to replace them, and I don't reread books, so it's not like they get old and need to be replaced. So I don't remember ever replacing a book. Now there was a series one time that we were moving, and I was like, I'm never gonna read these again, and I just got rid of the books. And then the author released another book, like I was saying about J.R. Ward, and I was like, I need to know what's happening. And so I did have to purchase the last book again so that I could read it and be ready for the next book that was coming out. But as far as like replacing books, I don't think I've done that. Number 9, the last book you had an argument over. Does that mean in my head? Because I feel like I argue a lot with the authors in my head. And I especially argue with the characters in my head. But the last book that I had an argument over, it wasn't a full-on argument, but it was probably because I said disparaging things about the Twilight books to a person who was a devotee to the Twilight books, and so she did not appreciate my opinion about that book, about that whole series, and about the writing. I just think it's horrible. I think the whole thing is horrible. And yes, I have read the first book. I made myself read 100 pages of it before I left it in an airport for the next person to come along and pick it up if they wanted to read it, but no thanks. And number 10, the last book you couldn't get a hold of. I like the way somebody wrote that. I feel like this question was written maybe by somebody who lives in the southern part of the United States, because that seems to be a phrase we say, well, I couldn't get a hold of that book. I don't know who originally wrote this tag, but that's what it makes me think of. Okay, I couldn't really think of one of these either, because I feel like almost everything is available on either Kindle or Audible or some other format. If I want to pay for it, then it seems like an easy thing to do. However, I was doing a buddy read with Heather from the Soggy Expat Book Nerd, and she wanted to read a book called On Chapel Sands. And she said, show me what it was about and that we could read it together. And I was like, okay, great. So first I tried my library. Nothing came up under that title name. And I was like, well, that's weird. And so I went and looked on Goodreads, and I was like, okay, it's a thing. It's on here. And I saw the author's name. And I thought, okay, let me just look up by author and I'll see if I can find it that way. And so I put her name in there, and a book popped up that says that it was written by her called 5 Days Gone. And it was about the same story. And I was like, wait a minute, because they're nonfiction. It was a nonfiction book. And I was like, why does this book have 2 different names and 2 different covers? And so I texted her back and I was like, well, I think I found it, but it has a different name. And she said, oh yeah, I think the US version is different. And so she's in Wales, and we didn't think about the fact that it would be a different version. So I guess that was hard for me to get a hold of, but I still found it. It just took a little bit more work to get there. So that's it. I hope that you enjoyed these questions and found out a little bit more about me. I would love it if you would answer the questions below. If you have your own YouTube channel and you want to do this tag, feel free to consider yourself tagged and then let me know that you did it so I can go over and watch it. I would love to. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any future videos. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.